Hey everybody, welcome back to Perspectify. And Dhruv and I couldn't be more excited to do this episode because of two reasons. Right?
The first reason is that we have obviously gotten loving responses from your end. We have a subscriber who's coming from France. His name is Brett. And of course, big love, big shout out to you, Brett, from our end. Thank you for subscribing and thank you for liking our content. Also, we had someone very interestingly, we had someone reach out to us on LinkedIn, both me and Rakshit, someone called Ridhima. In fact, she left a comment in our last video also, and she specifically reached out to Rakshit for that matter to tell him how much she found the podcast insightful, and also some ways in which we could probably expand the future episodes. So big shout out to both of you guys. Love, lots of love from our end. I mean, I couldn't personally be more
Yeah,
pumped to know that there are listeners across the world who are slowly starting to get to know about this podcast.
absolutely. And just at the beginning, if you like this episode or if you have heard our previous episodes and have any questions, feedback, please feel free to reach out to us on our LinkedIn. And we will make sure 100% that we reply back to you. And the
Absolutely.
and the second reason why we are so excited about today's episode is because today we are doing something different, Dhruv, right? Today we are talking about we are doing kind of like a case study, a very interesting case study, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard about, but we'll essentially deep dive into the product and marketing strategy. Like, what did this company do differently, right? And this
Correct.
episode would be really useful for any marketer or
Hmm.
any product manager
Hmm.
or any business owner trying to build organic distribution for their product, for their company, for their business, right? So I think it's a super insightful. It's going to be a super
Hmm.
insightful episode. Why don't you uh,
Hmm.
tell us what is this about? What is this case study about?
Correct. No. So I think again we've been discussing ever since we started this podcast of covering real case studies in the market, right? Wherein we can actually decode, unravel the strategies of companies that are doing exceptionally well in the content or even in the product space for that matter, right? And I feel like one company's name that has always stood out in my head, right? Everybody is somewhere they mentioned it in passing that you know what this company did something pretty different is Physics Wala. More than
Absolutely.
anything, I think you have told me a lot about their sort of interesting journey, their sort of interesting sort of startup
Yeah.
business. I'd love to learn from this. I mean, like what why do you think that this is an important case study to learn from, and what could we sort of take away from this case study?
Sure. So, before we get into this case study, right, and before we do all those market mapping and all of those things, right, but first, let me tell you something interesting, right? This company, I think 2 days back, reported a net profit of 24 crores in the EdTech industry, right?
Okay. And I don't personally know any edtech making profits, very honestly.
Exactly.
Like might be
Exactly.
might be wrong, but I haven't heard of any.
At least the
Yeah.
new age EdTech companies.
At least the
Yeah.
more of the big scale startups. I mean,
Yeah.
the small ones obviously is a different thing, but I haven't heard of much.
And here's the kicker, right? Uh,
Hmm.
more than their net profit, which is sort of like an accounting thing. You can make it up, right? Their EBITDA cash flow was 127 crores for the financial year 23, right? And their
Hmm.
revenue grew 3.5x from 234 crores in FY22 to 798 crores in FY23. Just imagine 700 crores of
Hmm.
revenue, almost 800 crores of revenue, 120 crores of free cash flow or EBITDA profitability.
Interesting.
Right? And
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
company has been in existence since 2020. It
Since
went,
2020?
yeah, it went
Oh,
up,
I didn't know that.
it went up against Unacademy, it went up against
Hmm.
Byju's. And when
Hmm.
everyone is sort of struggling, this
mm,
company has
mm,
actually gone on to be a behemoth
mm,
in this industry. Before we actually go into the whole business side of physics wala, right?
mm,
And how did they why I think they are valued at $1 billion, right? I think first we need to really understand what this edtech industry is, right? I don't think a lot
mm,
of people
mm,
know about it. And
mm,
maybe through this entire exercise, people will be able to really understand how to look at their industry as well, right? The entire edtech industry, first we need to identify what are the age groups that it serves, what is the core JTBD or jobs to be done, and finally, who are the paying customers in this industry, right?
mm, mm,
So let's first talk about the age group served. Okay. Broadly, they have divided the age group segment into three parts, right? The
mm,
first one is your preschool kind of a thing, right? Then comes what is known as K-12. And finally, the
mm,
third kind of segment, which is just emerging right now, is kind of
mm.
like an upgrade kind of a segment, right? Right? So
Correct.
broadly, three age groups, three age brackets, and core job to be done for all of these three brackets are very, very different. So your preschool
Mm,
kind of a category would basically talk about reaching a certain milestone, right? So
mm,
by a
mm,
milestone, what I mean is कि यार मेरे बच्चे को खाना खाना सिखा दो, uh,
mm, mm, mm.
right?
Correct.
Second, which is basically what we have also gone through, right? Which is getting into a college, which is your whole K-12 kind of a
Mm,
thing. I want to get into
mm,
IITs. I want to get into these government medical exams, crack these government
mm,
medical
mm,
exams, and this could be life changing for me because if I'm coming from let's say tier two town, and I'm like the only way for me to get out of that situation is to basically hope to get into these universities, right? And
mm,
here we are not being philosophical and talking about the fact, yeah, whether this is right or wrong, but this is how
mm,
general Indians think. And then the third segment that we spoke about, the whole upgrade wala segment, that is to
mm,
basically, get a job, meet my career goals, and all of those things. Right. Now coming to the paying persona, paying who are these paying
mm,
personas, right?
mm,
Who is giving you the money for them, and who are the users that you need to target at the end of the day? So
mm,
basically, for an upgrade kind of a model, you would need students to pay for it because they're already above
mm,
18. They have like a 30, 40,000 rupee job, so they can sort of manage it, right? But anything below that segment, which is the two segment that we first talked about, the K-12 and the preschool wala jo segment hai, वहां पर mostly parents who are paying for it,
of
right?
course. Of
Yeah,
course. Makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. So physics wala, right? Where does physics wala lie? And this is where I'll shift to the next slide of this Bloom
Mm,
report. Uh, physics wala basically lies in a segment called core learning segment, not
okay.
supplemental. Okay? They're basically divided into three segments: core learning, supplemental, and catalyst. Right? So your
Mm,
core learning segment is basically I'm in ninth grade, I want to study physics. Right? If I don't study
right.
that, I'll fail in exam. So that is a core learning.
Right.
वो करना ही करना है, चाहे कुछ भी हो जाए. Right?
Mm, mm.
And then the second segment is basically your supplemental learning. What we went through,
Correct.
your
10th,
co-curricular
11th, 12th.
activities, co-curricular,
Okay. Co-curricular.
co-curricular activities. Yeah,
Co-curricular. Got
yeah,
it.
exactly.
Mm,
And then the catalyst, which is basically counseling हो गया, P2P learning हो गया. Let's say
mm,
you want to get
mm.
into US की कोई यूनिवर्सिटी में जाना है, तो उधर तुम्हें counseling की जरूरत पड़ेगी and all of those things, right?
Mm, mm, mm,
So according to my research, right,
mm.
the 8th to 12th grade वाला जो segment है, which is the K-12 वाला segment, between 8th to 12th grade, I think these would be the highest ARPU customers, right?
ARPU again is what for the uninitiated people.
Okay, so ARPU is basically average revenue per user, right? So
Right.
um, average revenue per user for these customers would be the highest.
Mm,
And
mm,
why is that? Because this is the time between 8th through to 12th
mm,
grade
mm,
where you would essentially want your kids to study really well so that they can get into a
mm,
good college, get into a good career. whatever, right? We have all been through it, right?
Correct.
Dhruv, if you recall, how much did your parents pay in, let's say, from between 8th to 12th grade, or let's say 11th and 12th grade in tuition fee per month?
I can't even imagine. I'm assuming that they probably spent at least half of what I spent on my college fees, right? Or probably more also. I
More.
really don't know. And that's a lot. That's still saying a lot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
For school, that's too much.
I think my
Hmm.
parents must have paid almost 20 to 30,000 rupees a month on just
Yeah,
tuition fee,
correct.
right?
Of course. Yeah,
That,
yeah,
just imagine that in terms of an yearly revenue per student. 20,000 for
yeah.
one subject, for overall, let's say 30,000, 30,000 into 12, 3 lakh
Easily average of
50,000.
3 lakhs a year, right? 3 lakhs
Yeah,
pretty much a year,
exactly.
easily.
Exactly. 3 lakh
Hmm.
60,000 a year for students, right?
And just to add on to that, I mean, it's interesting because this is a market that is essentially it's something every Indian has to undergo if you're in that privileged sphere of education, right? So a big chunk of people who are undergoing education are undergoing it. It is mandatory, and the
Absolutely.
kind of revenue per user per year. I mean, I can't even imagine the LTV also for that matter. If you even multiply it across the number of years, these people are going to keep coming back to you. You know, you're roughly seeing, I mean, just one user over the lifetime is probably spending 6, 7 lakhs.
If you get one user, the LTV value could be like exponential in India, right? So, because the average revenue per user was so high, right? It was,
Hmm,
as we discussed, it can be as high as 3,60,000 a year, right? In tier one cities. And because there is so much price elasticity, right? Because every parent, no matter where they are coming from, वो loan ले लेंगे, but they want their kid to study
hmm,
for the best tutors, schools. If they manage to get into a great college, the outcomes can be amazing, both socially as
correct.
well as economically. So Indian parents don't really think about money when they think about education, right? And which is why I don't blame all the edtechs who are going crazy on marketing, right? If you think about it, if the average revenue per user can be as high as 3,60,000 rupees, why wouldn't you do IPL campaigns to attract
Of
users,
course.
and
Hmm,
just building a brand? Because at the end of the day, you know for a fact that if you manage to acquire users over a very, very long period of time, the
hmm,
outcomes can be amazing for your company, right? It's just a long
correct.
term game. So this is where Physics Wala comes in. Super interesting, right? So Physics Wala is run by this guy called Alak Pandey, who
Hmm,
started his career by teaching or by joining a coaching institute, and eventually he became a teacher on YouTube. Now, can you guess which segment was he first targeting? So he did not target CBSE, IIT preparation, NEET preparation. Guess which target market that guess the target market.
I have no idea.
So it was 10th grade ICSE students, right? And
Okay.
if you think about it,
Hmm, hmm,
there are 38 lakh CBSE students in total,
hmm,
right? This is
hmm.
a data point which I just took out. And there
Okay.
are just 2.5 lakh ICSE students.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, this is as far as I know that ICSC people traditionally have people who have had a tad bit more expensive schooling.
Yeah,
Is that possibly a reason why they wanted to double down on that?
exactly, exactly. And
Okay.
if you think about it, so Unacademy, Byju's were already present 7 years back, right? They were releasing videos, they had a platform,
Hmm.
everything was great for them. And because they had raised so much money, they had to target the masses, right? They had to target your CBSE, they had to target ICSE. So there was
Of
no
course.
room for any person to
Correct.
come in and, break that monopoly. So the only
Hmm.
way, and
Hmm.
this is what we talk about, right? You target a very specific niche till the time
Yes.
you become the monopoly over there. and then you sort of expand to
Yes.
other areas.
This is actually marketing 101. There's a book called 22 Immutable Principles of Marketing, in which if you are someone who is playing the same exact game, the only way to differentiate yourself is to have just a single differentiating variable, right? Just tweaking
Yeah,
one variable so people remember you and they know you for that, right? People aren't
yeah,
going to remember the second, third, fourth in that same space, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And this is where things get interesting, right, for physics Pala, because he's not only targeting a very niche audience which is underserved at that point in time, right? He's also targeting a very specific class, which is the 10th grade. I think the reason why he specifically chose 10th grade, if you really think about it, is because 11th and 12th में आईआईटी जेई की तैयारी तो करेगा ही जो फिजिक्स पढ़ेगा फिजिक्स वाला से
Correct.
he'll eventually do IIT JEE exam.
Yeah.
He'll want to crack that exam, right? So it
Yeah.
was like a 2 year plan that he
Yeah.
thought of from day one. That if he built like a pretty niche audience which loves him, which
Yeah.
absolutely loved his content, his teaching
Correct.
style, would come back to
Hmm.
him to study IIT JEE classes, and that is where he
Correct.
could essentially double down his brand and get into IIT JEE coaching.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
If you think
So you're
about it.
essentially saying that he built up that trust from ground up, like from ground zero, built up that trust after 2 years, after 2 year long gap from the 10th to 12th and then college, right? Till that time, he's still waiting. कि आप लोग मेरे को जानते हो, and now you probably will fall into my whole purchase cycle, right? Like that's the
Not
kind of
purchase
equation.
cycle, not
Yeah.
not purchase cycle, because the platform didn't launch like four
Hmm.
years. मतलब platform launched way later, right? But
Hmm.
point is
Hmm.
to get into that market, because if
Correct.
everyone, if an academy, if
Hmm.
Byju's,
Hmm.
everyone is trying to target and get IIT JEE students, right, initially, or
Correct.
need students, what is your way to get into that market when you don't
Yeah.
have 800 crores of venture capital,
Yeah.
2000
Yeah.
crores of money to just burn, right? So I
You
think
start at the base. You start
just
like way
start at
before
the base.
anybody has already started.
Yeah,
I mean, this reminds me, I was speaking to someone who was actually trying to expand geo into colleges. And for a while, matlab, I don't know why, like, even though it's actually an obvious like proposition, I didn't understand like why does geo want to get into colleges? And fundamentally, it makes sense, right? Because I like used geo in my smartphone when I was in college. And probably like very early on because I heard about good offers and all my friends told me, right? And after that, my point being, till date, I still use Geo. Like once you have a SIM, you don't change it, right? Nobody
exactly,
changes it after a while, right? So
exactly.
it's like आपका एक बार base set हो गया कि I like this person, this product, right? You want to continue like going back to them maybe even years after because you don't
Yeah,
trust anybody else, right?
exactly, exactly,
So it's very
exactly.
interesting.
And you know, and you know what's interesting was exactly 2 years after that, exactly 2 years after he started, he got to 50,000 subscribers, right?
Hmm.
And this is where he spoke for the first time about building a platform.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
what's interesting is his main goal wasn't to build a platform because yeah, Meko, I want to monetize these users, and he wasn't thinking like
Right.
a growth, typical growth hacker. Yeah, he wasn't. He wanted to solve a problem. He wanted to solve a problem. The problem was that because he was at 50,000 subscribers, right? 50,000 subscribers is a huge scale, right?
Hmm.
वहां पर if students are telling you, sir, मेरा ये doubt है, help me
Hmm.
solve this problem, right? And there are 10,000 students who are asking you this question. You can't serve these 10,000 users, right? So his
Of
core
course.
insight was कि यार I want to make a platform जहां पर बच्चे आए और
Hmm.
डाउट्स उनके क्लियर हो जाए. That was his
Hmm.
initial thought,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
But this platform wouldn't uh, happen till 2020, right? In
Hmm. Hmm.
2020, what changed in 2020, right? What fundamentally changed across the world? What was that one event that changed?
We all know it, Rakshit. Don't need to
Yeah.
tell us.
So it was COVID, right? And
Hmm.
offline coaching stopped. Suddenly, online became the new norm. Everyone moved
Hmm.
to online. And this is where his core community of students essentially came back to him and were like, Sir, you either create a platform, which you've been talking
Hmm.
about for the last 2 years, right? जहाँ पर you have spoken about the fact कि यार सस्ते में education होगी and all of those things, like it
Hmm.
would be
Hmm.
educate good quality education at low price, right? You either build that platform or we will go to some other online coaching institute which is charging us
Right.
50,000 rupees or like 50 times more, right?
Yeah.
And this is where we come to the third part of this episode, which is basically
Hmm.
the platform. So just a quick
Hmm.
fact, right? The moment that
Hmm.
platform was launched, right,
Hmm.
it got 7 lakh visitors instantly, 7 lakh downloads
Hmm.
instantly. But once again, the core insight was to build a platform for
Hmm.
his core users, which were students not from the best of the backgrounds who couldn't afford,
Hmm.
let's say, 50,000 or a 60,000 rupee coaching institute, but still wanted to get good quality education. Now, let's talk about what was unique about this platform, about this new platform, right?
Hmm.
So, the first point, so there are basically just 4 points, 4 points hai, which
Hmm.
differentiates Physics Wala from all other platforms. The first point was when it launched at a price which was like extremely low as compared to all other players combined. So
Yes.
obviously I don't know the numbers,
Hmm.
exact numbers, but I think they ranged from around 25 to 50,000 wala range. I might be wrong.
Hmm.
When
Hmm.
PW launched, it gave its courses at 3 to 5,000 rupees. 10x का
Oh
difference है. 10x price difference, more than
my
10x
God.
price difference.
And like we would like figure out like how they managed to reduce pricing so much. Was it just on the back of the fact that they had the biggest base, to just monetize without doing anything, right? I mean, the simple understanding I'm probably getting from this is that if you have that big following base, right? You don't need to spend excessively on marketing further. I mean, I don't see
Exactly.
Physics Wala marketing themselves in an IPL.
Exactly.
Like, I've never seen them. I just know them because of word of mouth, right? So if you
Exactly.
have that kind of word of mouth already, you have a built up base, you could easily discount your pricing just on the back of that.
You answered it correctly. They were not spending 800 crores on IPL. They
Yeah,
were not
yeah.
spending 2,000 crores uh, in brand building
Mm-hmm.
exercises, right?
Correct.
What they had built was a very, very loyal audience that wanted to study
Mm-hmm.
from him, that really liked him, and they were just monetizing on top of it at an
Makes sense.
extremely low price. And they अब education में if you remember, right, education
Mm.
में parents don't mind spending that money, right? And probably
Right.
if you and I were to start a physics parlor today, we would get nowhere. Let's say we sell our courses for 1,000 rupees, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
don't have that credibility, right? Because we don't have that credibility, because people don't know us. They don't know कि यार हम कैसा physics पढ़ाएंगे, कैसा maths
Of
पढ़ाएंगे,
course.
right? And
You spend
that's
on acquisition basically,
you
right?
you
Mm.
basically built your acquisition
Yeah.
strategy over 7 years, right?
Mm, mm,
And just
mm,
think about it. First is price. Second was
mm.
obviously that we spoke about distribution. YouTube was
Correct.
their biggest distribution and is their biggest distribution
Mm.
channel.
Makes
Third
sense.
was student love. They loved how he taught. He understood the student's problem, solved it, got prices
Mm.
down across industry. Not only physics wala,
Right.
but every other player in the industry was forced to reduce their price because they would just
Yeah.
lose out, right? And finally, from product point of view, right? And of course, this is what I have noticed, right? I might be completely wrong. What physics wala
Mm,
brought
mm,
in was that I won't give you the best teacher from Kota who will charge me 1 crore
mm.
rupees, but I will ensure that you have a structured learning. your learning outcomes are met. Alak Pandey really cared about the students to essentially build like the
mm,
whole curriculum around it. So
yeah,
he just did not have random live classes. He had a full
mm,
course outline, multiple courses outlined. Okay,
mm,
you might be very sucky at, let's say, physics, and
mm,
you don't need math. So if you are,
mm,
or you might be a dropper, right? You might not have passed IIT JEE in 12th
mm,
grade, and you're doing it. You're dropping out for 1 year and just trying to get into this exam. I'll help you do that. I
mm,
have a special batch just for those students. And that's
right.
how we sort of built the product in nuances over here. Let's just summarize everything and let's talk about the future and why. And this,
Mm,
till now, what we've covered is 2020, 21, right?
yeah.
Abhi tak what we haven't understood is why suddenly a 3.5x of growth kaise aaya, right? It can't be
Mm,
just content. It has to be something else,
mm,
right?
yeah.
So this 3.5x ka growth this year has come because they've essentially expanded into other territories as well. So let's go back to the same matrix that we talked about in the beginning. What do students want to do? They want to either get a job, they want to get into a college, or they want to uh, reach a milestone. What are post 12th grade? What are the other things which essentially help you get a job? Very high paying status society का काम कौन से होते हैं? Your UPSC.
Yeah.
Similarly, you have other government exams, PCS के exams
Mm,
होते
mm,
हैं.
mm,
You have CA,
correct.
right? You have all of these things. And what's interesting is that they're going offline, right?
Okay.
Now, which is you're like, why? It doesn't make
Yeah,
sense, right? Why would
doesn't
you
make
not do
sense.
this?
Yeah.
Why would you do this?
Yeah.
Why would you do this, right?
Mm,
But going back to Alak Pandey, so Alak Pandey is a guy who really listens to his students, right? Think about it. These are tier two,
mm,
tier three city people, right? They don't
of
have the
course.
best internet connection. They don't
Yeah,
have the
yeah,
best
yeah.
uh, uh, gadgets and all of those things, right?
Mm,
And they are they can't, matlab, because of their economic background, they can't really go to Kota and afford to pay hostel fees and all of those things.
of course. Mm, mm,
That is why opening up offline centers for, and this might be a partial reason, like this might be a partial reason, but this is a very valid reason. Ki yaar, I will open up these coaching institutes in places where
mm,
majority of my students are, so that they don't have to leave their home and they can
yeah.
come and study over here.
I think the takeaway, at least for me here, is that, and this is what I've been hearing from what you've been saying so far, is that the founder listens to the user base so frequently. And I feel like sometimes as business owners, we are sometimes a little too caught up in कि profit कितना आ रहा है and कितना
Yeah,
और सेल कर सकते हैं, कितना बढ़ा
yeah,
सकते हैं. But
yeah,
for sure, I think a very a side note, but I was reading, how, Japan's earthquake and all this happened, like very off topic. But do you know that they still have the longest standing companies, like century old companies, even though they have like what, some 20, 30 earthquakes a year, right?
yeah,
Business are destroyed, houses are destroyed, and even then they have that kind of long standing like cultural companies. And the reason that I found online was that these guys are primarily building user first stuff, right? Like they're so focused on the users कि they're like, भाई अगर ये company भी खराब हो जाए, I still want to provide some service, some utility to my users, and they
mm,
find some workaround and they
yeah,
still continue,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
that kind of planning, I feel that is something that I don't think a lot of people are doing right now. And I feel
yeah,
like even if it doesn't make profitable sense immediately, just because the users are like कि भाई, they think like तुम भगवान हो यार, मतलब like you are listening to everything we're telling you,
yeah,
right? That translates into that, the business at some point in time. I feel like even though physics wala might have started as a YouTube channel and now they're transitioning into a platform and all, again, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they started out with the intention that we will build an
Yeah,
entire business out of it.
absolutely.
It was just
Absolutely.
the fact that this person was so focused on providing the best benefit, and he was a teacher. He wanted to help more people learn, and now he's going offline. I mean, it's insane for me to think about it, the kind of transitions he's making just to make school, like education, more accessible for these people,
Yes, absolutely.
right?
And you're absolutely right. And the best part about all of this for marketers and for product people is
Hmm.
the fact that all till now, even for all the new categories that they're going after, right?
Hmm.
IIT JEE, they're going into UPSC, they're going into CA.
Yeah,
All of that is being driven by content on YouTube.
yeah,
So there was just one face,
100%.
Alak Pandey, but
Hmm.
now they are basically expanding into UPSC. So they've got like a great mentor for UPSC exams. They've got a great person for CA. All of that.
Do you know this? Do you know this? So I was again talking to one person from Vedantu.
Huh.
This person operated, so he's a YouTube manager. He operated about five different channels about CBSE, like NCRT textbooks in different languages.
Yeah.
It's Hindi, Kannada, Telugu.
Yeah.
Because even if they're getting 600, 400 views on the videos, right? They're mass producing videos. Every single
Yeah.
day, a video comes out from one mentor talking about one language, one particular case study, right? Even if they're getting 300 views, right? The amount of people viewing, the amount of viewership they're getting across so many views, so many languages, and the conversion they must be getting just on the basis of that, high intent, it's
Yeah.
insane, right? And I
Yeah.
feel like obviously YouTube seems to be the go-to platform for any kind of
Absolutely.
educational content for most businesses right now.
So that is it from my side. Any final thoughts?
No, I think this was super insightful for me. And I feel like if any of you guys would like to review any particular strategies of a single company, or would like more episodes like these, or even, if you guys have any other suggestions, some other topic that you would like us to cover, feel free to let us know. And, we're always happy to experiment and give you guys, something actionable, something to take away in each episode, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think please subscribe to us, like this episode if you haven't already, and that's all from us for today. That's me, Dhruv.
And Rakshit signing off. And yeah, see you in the next one.